The story begins by introducing a captain named Billy, who owns a boat and works with many friends on it. Besides his crew, there are many other boats just like his operating in the same harbor, heading far into the sea to catch fish. This means the competition here is extremely fierce. At first, Billy and his crew earned a lot of profit. They caught plenty of fish and sold them quickly. But as competition grew, the fish population dropped and they could no longer catch as much as before, causing their profit to shrink. The entire process brought mostly losses and expenses. Billy as the owner had to bear it all, yet he still paid his workers well, because he knew they trusted him. After returning from a long day, Billy's face showed clear disappointment. He felt they had earned very little once again. Just then a former crew member approached and said he could no longer work with him, because another captain offered higher pay, and he also knew Billy's boat wasn't profitable anymore. Billy couldn't stop him and the man left. This made Billy even more stressed. He went straight to his friend Mike and asked, "You won't leave me, right?" Mike replied honestly that if they shared profit they would also share loss. He and the others would never abandon him. This gave Billy the strength to keep going. Later, Billy visited a nightclub, where the other members were enjoying time with their families. Billy had none of his own, had never married, but treated his crew like family. At the club, Billy gathered everyone and shared something important. Although the profit was low, they now had a plan to get rich. Billy explained that many boats fished in this region, but instead of staying there they would head toward a specific spot near the Bermuda Triangle. Most fishermen knew this place but never dared approach because it was too dangerous. Billy said he knew a way to move around the triangle's edge without entering it directly, so they would be safe. Seeing Billy so confident, the members agreed to follow him. Billy began preparing all supplies for the journey with everyone's help. Before departure he met Rick, a former member now working in a private company, and invited him to join the new trip. Billy promised they would catch rare, valuable fish, and Rick eventually agreed. The plan was finalized, but soon they discovered Rick and Mike didn't get along. They argued often and sometimes even fought. The others had to separate them. Finally, Billy announced it was time to leave. Each member boarded the ship one by one. Their wives waved goodbye, but none of them knew that the direction they were heading was a place from which almost no one ever returned. Billy and the whole crew began their journey to the Bermuda Triangle. They prepared enough food and supplies for days. Billy assigned specific tasks and everyone followed. All food and drinks were stored in the freezer so nothing would spoil. Near the Bermuda Triangle, the waves grew dangerously strong and the boat could sink. And because of that, Billy's crew prepared for the worst. Their only thought was to catch as many fish as possible, so they moved toward the deadly region known as the Bermuda Triangle. Until now no one dared to enter this place, or those who did never came back. Following their routine, they spent an entire day at sea, but many more days lay ahead. They arrived at a checkpoint Billy had established right before entering the triangle. When they got there the weather was completely clear, which shocked Jack and he rushed straight into Billy's cabin. Jack asked there isn't a single storm cloud here at all. Before reaching this point, Billy had said they might face heavy clouds or even a small storm. But now there wasn't a cloud in sight. No sign of anything approaching. Billy is shocked as well because according to the weather report, this place was supposed to be rainy, but now there is no storm. He thinks maybe the storm weakened halfway. Clearly, the storm would come from the Bermuda Triangle, but it might have lost its strength along the way. Even so, Billy reassures Jack that their journey will continue as planned. He has prepared everything perfectly. They continue moving closer to the Bermuda Triangle, and at the same time a weather monitoring center in another region is tracking the surrounding area. A senior staff member working at his computer suddenly detects a massive storm approaching from the Bermuda Triangle. The intensity of the storm shocks him because no storm from the triangle has ever been this strong. He immediately reports this to his superiors. The problem is that when Billy and his crew set out they didn't inform anyone, meaning no one knows they are heading into a dangerous zone. After many days, Billy's team finally reaches a point that allows them to go around the Bermuda Triangle's edge, because entering directly is far too dangerous. This is why Billy planned a detour. After analyzing everything, he finally allows them to drop the nets, meaning they can now begin fishing and potentially catch a lot. Once they get permission, the crew begins lowering the nets. After a lot of effort, they succeed in setting them and only need to wait for the fish to get trapped. Everyone hopes for rare large fish that can bring in high profit. After hours, night falls and Billy tells the crew to rest. They all go to sleep. At night, the ship's autopilot is activated. No one needs to stay in the control room. The crew rests through the night. The next morning, when everyone gathers to check the nets, at first they find no fish at all, disappointing them because this location is supposed to be rich with fish. Then a few nets catch some big ones. The crew quickly hauls them aboard and stores them in the freezer. But the total is still small. Some freezers are empty while others are barely filled. All nets have been pulled in and this is all they have. This leaves the team discouraged. During breakfast, their faces remain gloomy, and some even begin doubting Billy's prediction this time. While Mike and Rick start arguing and nearly fight again, the others must intervene. Billy becomes increasingly angry and warns them that if they fight again they won't get paid and won't be allowed back on the ship. Eventually, they separate and both men return to their tasks. They continue dropping nets trying to avoid catching anything unusual, because if they fail to catch something valuable this entire trip will be a waste. The entire investment for this journey will become meaningless. Even so, Billy and his crew must keep working despite the hardship. Billy also says that in a few days they will face a large storm. Gradually, the rain starts falling and Billy's prediction turns out to be correct. But they cannot afford to waste time, so even in heavy rain they keep working and lowering the nets. Suddenly, a huge fish gets caught in one of the nets, and the crew quickly pulls it up. After a struggle, the creature emerges and turns out to be a dangerous shark. The shark jumps onto the deck. The crew dodges and tries to fight it, and unfortunately Jack is standing right in front of it. Jack kicks the shark away, but this is his biggest mistake. His leg slips into the shark's mouth and the shark bites down. Billy sees this and rushes to grab a pistol and shoots the shark to save Jack. If he had been any slower, Jack's leg might have been severed. Luckily, Jack isn't seriously injured, otherwise the leg would have needed to be amputated due to infection. They keep the dead shark as a trophy even though it adds very little to their total catch. The crew sits together discussing whether they made a mistake coming here. Billy also isn't sure whether they will catch enough fish or not. They try everything but the catch remains small. At this moment, a large military aircraft appears directly above the Bermuda Triangle carrying many soldiers. The aircraft encounters a massive storm. The radar and electronic systems fail. The engines malfunction, and eventually the aircraft crashes straight into the Bermuda Triangle. Fortunately, Billy and his crew are sailing around the triangle's edge so they are unaffected. And they continue lowering their nets and trying to fish. A few days later, Jack had recovered and went to the control room to talk to Billy. He said bluntly that the other crew members might not believe him, thinking Billy might not know everything. They hadn't made much profit, and staying at the port could earn him more. Hearing this, Billy became angry. He reminded Jack that they were paid to work, not to complain pointlessly. Then sent him back to the group to continue working. This was the first time Jack had seen Billy that furious. With such a huge investment, Billy expected results, so the next day everyone worked faster and kept dropping the nets. They continued lowering the nets, using two main types, hand-cast nets and fixed nets. The hand-cast ones were thrown directly by hand, while the fixed nets were dropped beforehand and pulled up once fish passed through. In the open sea, if you want to catch a lot, you watch the birds. From above the birds can see schools of fish and dive straight toward them. But Billy's crew still had nothing remarkable. Jack and the others tried their best, but the waves gradually grew stronger. Heavy waves forced the fish to dive deeper, out of the net's reach. At that moment, Mike asked Rick for bait, but because the boat was shaking violently the bait slipped into the water. Rick and the others helped Mike retrieve it. While Mike struggled to keep control of the net's position, a hook suddenly caught his hand. Mike screamed, but the noise on deck was too loud for anyone to hear. He was yanked into the water along with the hook. No one knew what happened to Mike until his longtime rival Rick noticed. He shouted for help and both Rick and Jack jumped in after him. Mike had sunk deep because of the hook, but Rick managed to cut it loose and bring him back to the surface. He was barely breathing, but Billy immediately performed CPR. After several attempts, Mike recovered and received medical treatment. The hook was removed and he was given injections to prevent an extremely likely infection. The next day, after resting, Mike thanked Jack for saving his life. Jack bluntly said that without Rick he would have died. Even though Rick had been Mike's enemy, he still saved him. Mike grew emotional and thanked Rick, and it seemed their feud finally dissolved as they began talking peacefully. But to make money they still needed to catch a lot more fish, because the results were still far from what they had hoped for. The waves grew stronger and they began sensing the coming storm. Finally, morning arrived and another crew member came to the cabin to tell Billy the others wanted to talk. When Billy came down, everyone looked at him with suspicion. Jack and the crew said that 5 days had passed with nothing like what Billy had promised. They had no profit, and if nothing changed they should return to port. The storm was making things worse, but Billy convinced them by saying that according to the forecast tomorrow would have no storm. This was the best opportunity to catch fish because when the waves weaken the fish rise to the surface. And indeed, the next day there was no storm. The crew grew excited and dropped the nets non-stop. Large fish and huge numbers filled the nets, getting tossed into the freezers one after another. Within just a few hours, the freezers were full. This was the biggest haul they had ever collected on any trip. Selling them would earn millions of dollars, enough to let everyone stop working for years. Joy spread across every face. The ship was full of all kinds of fish, exactly what they came for. No fishermen or companies came to this area, meaning the fish here were untouched. However, along with the fish, another surprise appeared. A major danger was waiting for them. After a while, Sin reported that the freezer had broken. It had suffered technical issues that couldn't be fixed immediately. Everyone panicked because without the freezer they couldn't preserve the fish. If the ice melted within hours and the fish weren't kept properly, the entire haul would rot. The only solution was to head back to the city as fast as possible. Billy thought about it. If they took the detour along the Bermuda Triangle's edge, it would take much longer because the ship was loaded with fish. Half a day at least. If they sailed straight through the triangle's center, they would get there faster. But this wasn't a joke. The center of the Bermuda Triangle was filled with mysteries no one understood. Billy presented the two options to everyone. Taking the long way meant losing the fish, but going straight through the center meant risking their lives while becoming millionaires. After some thinking, the entire crew chose to go through the center. They accepted the danger in exchange for the fortune waiting for them. They steered the boat toward the center of the Bermuda Triangle, knowing a massive storm was ahead. Billy reported their position to the rescue team. The rescue team warned them not to enter the Bermuda Triangle because an extremely powerful storm was forming. But at this point it was likely too late, since Billy and his crew had already gone inside. And turning back was no longer possible. Billy and a few crew members controlled the boat. The rest went below deck because the waves were slamming into the ship non-stop. But everyone trusted Billy to get them through safely. The rescue team deployed a helicopter, but the storm was too strong, and communication with the boat was cut off. They searched the surrounding sea, but the storm grew fiercer by the minute. The waves rose so high no one could withstand them. Billy struggled to keep the boat steady. Sometimes the ship tilted violently. Jack assisted Billy from the control room. Suddenly, the anchor boom broke loose and smashed into the control room window, causing seawater to rush inside. All crew members were alerted. Billy and Jack were deeply worried. Billy told Jack to take control while he went out to cut the anchor to prevent the boat from capsizing. Jack believed that even if the anchor was cut, the boat might still be unstable and could sink. But Billy didn't listen and went to cut it anyway. The storm refused to weaken. No one knew whether they would survive. But on the other side, the rescue team kept searching from the helicopter in the raging winds. However, the helicopter was also running low on fuel. Fortunately, another rescue plane appeared in the area to refuel them. But the storm was far too violent for any refueling to be done, and they had to keep going. On the helicopter, there were two soldiers. They decided they should jump into the water to escape. One soldier jumped, but the remaining pilot was trapped in the helicopter as it sank into the ocean and died. The waves were too strong. The surviving soldier couldn't save him. This proved that anything entering the Bermuda Triangle was destined to be destroyed. Meanwhile, Billy and the entire crew tried to keep the boat stable. Billy cut the anchor, which helped straighten the boat, but it still wasn't completely stable. The crew tried to cover the broken window, but the fierce wind ripped the metal sheet away. Towering waves kept pounding them. Escape was nearly impossible. At this moment, Billy felt hopeless and blamed himself for everything. A massive wave flipped the boat, but miraculously, it balanced itself again. Billy comforted everyone, saying they were almost through the storm and would soon return to a normal life without such hardship. However, looking at the crew's faces, Billy realized they no longer trusted him. A crew member named Sin fell overboard due to a wave, and everyone immediately reacted. Jack used a fishing rod to pull Sin back onto the boat. Sin survived, but the situation remained dangerous. They continued fighting the storm, and eventually a beam of sunlight appeared. Everyone hoped they would survive, but the sunlight was instantly swallowed by a colossal wave. They had never seen a wave so massive in their lives. No one knew how to escape. The boat was trapped between the waves and flipped upside down, unable to right itself despite its efforts. Jack and the crew begged Billy to abandon the ship to save his life. But Billy refused to leave. This boat was his entire world, and if he abandoned it, he didn't know how he would go on. Even though they protested, Billy clung to the boat. Clearly his chances of survival were almost non-existent. The remaining crew in the water died for mysterious reasons, even though they were strong swimmers. The waters of the Bermuda Triangle truly held mysteries no one could explain. Anyone who entered never returned. In the end, Billy's entire crew died and the boat sank. They had gambled their lives to earn a fortune, but in the end they lost everything. The story ends here.